Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. I'm your host, Ross McCorkle, and above me here on the screen is my co-host, Joe Clark. And Joe, your Celtics are looking like they're going to pull off the sweep. I don't know how often that happens in the NBA Finals. Maybe it happens more often than I realize, but that would be a pretty big deal for you guys.
Yeah, no, they've managed to win the last two games, even though they haven't shot that well. They're just too talented top to bottom right now. It's been a lot of fun to watch.
You have any plans for the final game there? When is it? Is that
It's tomorrow night. I think I'm gonna watch it with my dad, and then hopefully be a parade next week that I can go to. So that would be a lot of fun.
nice? Have you ever I know you living in Boston, you don't root for the Patriots or anything, but growing up, did you ever take part in any of these parades just cuz it's
Yeah,
something to
no,
do
I
in the
actually
city?
I actually haven't, which is kind of crazy because there's been a lot, just even for the Celtics. There's only been one since I've been around for the Celtics. There's been one for the Bruins, like four for the Red Sox, but I've never made my way to one, so this will be the first time ever.
Nice, nice. Well, hopefully you get to go do that here pretty soon. We're going to dive right into today's topics, but first I want to plug at the bottom of the screen. There is a number you can call to have a question answered. We do that at the end of the show, typically just one question that we'll get through. So you can leave a voicemail, call the number 412-254-3145. We could sure use some fresh questions from you all. And, there's a lot that people want to know about right now in particular. With OTAs all wrapped up and mini camp. I mean, today's the last day of mandatory mini camp, so players are going to be breaking until late July. It's going to be kind of a barren in terms of news for the next month and a half or whatever. So, a lot of stuff to talk about right now in terms of what all has gone down at minicamp. And our first topic that we'll dive right into is talking about some of the wide receiver stuff. I mean, obviously, the whole notion of adding a wide receiver 2 has been talked about a ton this offseason. In my opinion, it's looking less and less likely by the day that the Steelers are going to be able to acquire somebody by trade. I mean, you see somebody like Courtland Sutton yesterday was like, I very much want to be in Denver. He did admit that there was a bit of a stalemate the other day, so maybe that ends up becoming more of a wedge than we realize, but it sure seems like his intentions are to remain with the Broncos, and I know Sean Payton, the head coach over there, has kind of backed that up. And then if you talk about the 49ers receivers, are the Steelers really going to trade for Ayuk if what he reportedly wants is $30 million? I mean, the San Francisco 49ers already reportedly at least have a $26 million offer on the table for him. So, I just am finding it difficult to see a path to trading for one of these guys. So then you start to look at, all right, well, who's on the roster? And, where's the hope in terms of who can step up and be that guy opposite of George Pickens? And one guy who has been receiving kind of rave reviews throughout minicamp is Calvin Austin III. He is entering his third season, drafted in the fourth round. You think back to when he was drafted, I think it was the Ravens that were picking like the very next pick or shortly after, and there was some report that when Austin was announced by the Steelers, somebody in the Ravens war room was upset. They're like, oh man, of course, because they wanted to draft him. And so, there was a lot of hype early on, I think largely, at least partially because of that Ravens war room kind of comment that came out. And so far, he hasn't really lived up to that. You'd think his rookie season, he lost it to a foot injury. And then moving into basically what was his rookie season last year, or at least the first year he actually played, the offense wasn't really built to support more than two receivers. And frankly, it barely even supported, Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. So kind of difficult to tell what he might be able to do in a system that might be more friendly and with quarterbacks that might be more friendly to the wide receivers. What are some of the things that were said about him? Do you have that pulled up on your end?
About Austin this week.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Azzanni?
Yeah, so let's see. We have my computer's being very slow right now. We have Justin Fields called him a savage with his route running. Um, that was the big thing I think that we have with him. And there's really just, I mean, just my thing with Austin is that I mean, even his rookie season, he was getting before he got hurt, he was getting a lot of hype. Like Adam Schefter, I remember he went on ESPN and said that it's not just George Pickens. Like the Steelers have two really talented rookie receivers, and then he got hurt. I think he was in a walkthrough before the first preseason game, and just obviously missed the whole season. Last year he came back, and I was pretty excited for him. The thing with him that scares me a little bit is that he just doesn't have the best catch radius. So I think that's gonna be something that's kind of a hindrance for him. Is he needs to obviously, I mean, he's a small guy, and that catch radius is so small that you really got to put it right on the money. But I mean, with his speed, if you get him in space, you can get him open and scheme him open, which is something that Arthur Smith will do a much better job of than than Matt Canada did. Then I think, yeah, he could definitely be a weapon for the Steelers. So I'm excited to see if he can kind of take more of a leap this season.
Yeah, I got it pulled up here. Justin Fields said he can create a lot of space in small spaces. He's quick, savage with the route running. He's just a hard worker. And so I think also Zach Azzanni, the wide receiver coach, said something basically along the lines of, he's been outstanding. That's a guy that's gone from here to here in the last 8 weeks. And it's been really fun to watch. He's a worker. He's intentful. He's urgent. He wants to be coached. You can see it. And so I think, Austin obviously knows that there is a sense of urgency entering year 3. I mean, based on when the Steelers typically choose to extend their players, their rookie or players on rookie contracts, next offseason would kind of be the time if they choose to extend him. And so this is an important offseason for him if he hopes to have a future with the Steelers. And he's definitely going to be looking to take that next step. I remember him talking earlier in maybe one of the OTA interviews. He said he was pretty after the Raiders game last year where he had that deep touchdown. He was kind of letting himself think, okay, maybe this is my kind of coming out party in terms of breaking out in the NFL. The flow of the season, how everything kind of progressed with the offense, obviously hindered that. And so, I think a lot of people kind of are overlooking Calvin Austin as a potential impact player within this offense. I mean, there was, like you said, there was a lot of hype about him the rookie season. And, here we are a couple years later. It's easy to kind of let that fade because it's not new and he hasn't showed it yet. But, I certainly think he could provide some juice to the offense. And especially with you got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields to excel at throwing the ball deep. This is a guy who's very fast. He could maybe be a guy who stretches defenses, vertically and opens up kind of some room for the Steelers to work underneath. And I think that could be a positive. And certainly if the Steelers don't acquire anybody, he's among the top candidates, along with maybe somebody like Van Jefferson, to be kind of the top weapon other than George Pickens. And speaking of George Pickens, there was some comments that he made about playing in the slot that were pretty interesting. We all kind of have talked about, well, the Steelers have added, Scotty Miller and Quez Watkins and all these guys who kind of maybe more are slot options. And here's George Pickens saying that, basically he expects that he's going to be playing more in the slot than he has previously. It looks like he's played about 15 to 20% of his snaps in the slot over his first 2 seasons. And so maybe we're talking about something like 30 or 35%, maybe on the upper range of what we could see from him kind of being moved around. What do you think about the possibility of him playing in the slot?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, his slot stops almost double those 11.7% in 2021, 20.1% in 2022. So it's got, yeah, I could see the number going up to something like 30% in the season. We know Arthur Smith values versatility and moving guys around, and with how the receiver room is right now, you put Pickens on the outside, teams are really just going to be able to are really going to scheme to take him away. Makes it a lot harder if you can move him around a little bit, get him in the slot, have him face different cornerbacks and different looks. So I think that's something that could be really beneficial for the Steelers. I mean, he played on the slot a little bit at Georgia. I mean, he's really mostly functioned as an outside receiver in the NFL, and he's not going to be a full-time slot. Maybe a handful of snaps here and there. He's still primarily an outside guy, but I think that's something that would really benefit Pittsburgh, and I think that Arthur Smith is kind of showing his chops there with his creativity. And I think moving Pickens into the slot more often could really be something that shows that off and benefits the team.
Yeah, and I know Russell Wilson this week was talking about George Pickens, saying, he's that guy in terms of, Russell was talking about all these special receivers that he's had the chance to play with over his career. You think DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Doug Baldwin, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, these kinds of guys. And he's basically saying George Pickens seems like he could, basically be right up there with them in terms of how special he is. And it seemed like at least Russell Wilson had been doing his homework on Pickens, because he cited some specific routes that he ran last year that resulted in touchdowns, basically saying only a handful of guys can turn that type of route into a touchdown, into a long touchdown at that. And so, being able to get him in these situations where he can maybe run a little bit more of a route tree, on the outside, you're a little closer to the sideline, so you're a little limited in terms of the type of routes that you can run, and you're going to be matching up with the team's top corners and stuff. So moving him inside, he'll be able to run some more routes underneath and kind of have some more opportunities for yards after the catch potentially, and so all of that could be a big positive and a huge way that the Steelers can prevent him from seeing some of these double teams. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that if he's moving around. And so I'm excited about that possibility with Pickens, and hopefully that pays off. Moving on to our next topic, Mike Tomlin. This was the big news of the week. It's kind of been, I don't want to say buried at this point, but the mandatory minicamp has happened, and there's been a ton of other news coming in. So Mike Tomlin happened on, what was that, Monday, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, Monday. And
Yeah.
so this happened prior to any of the practices. They got that out of the way, locked him up for 3 years. Or 3 additional years. So he's with the team through the 2027 season. And there has been some pretty mixed reactions in terms of, is he deserving of this contract? A lot of people obviously are going to point to the playoff success. There's going to be people on the other side of the argument saying, look at what floor he provides the team in terms of, all those winning or non-losing seasons rather. And so, where do you come in? Are you surprised by the 3-year extension of how long it is? Are you happy with the extension overall? Where are you at on that?
I'm a little surprised that it was 3 years instead of 2 years, but everything that's come out, since the extension of Mike Flores, so that Tomlin's really rejuvenated with Arthur Smith now as his offense coordinator, kind of the revamped offense. Um, and it just kind of it's a sign, it's a very clear sign that ownership in the front office still believes that Tomlin can coach his team to a Super Bowl. Um, nobody's happy with the lack of playoff success. I think there's some factors you have to consider, given that, quarterback play has not been great. Even the 2018 team that lost to Jacksonville, their cornerbacks and inside linebacker room was just a disaster. So there's been like some inherent flaws on the roster that have kind of prevented them from winning when it matters. I think this year you're kind of maybe the receiver room, but you really don't have as many of those flaws that I think are preventing you from winning. So if this team does make the playoffs, then kind of the onus is going to be, now is the time to really pony up and win in the postseason. So, and I think that they showed that faith in Tomlin, Khan, and Rooney by giving him the 3 years. I think maybe it's an extra year, maybe it's one more year than I would have expected, but obviously they're a lot smarter than I am when it comes to knowing who's best for the team, and they obviously believe that Tomlin's best for the team. And I think he's a great coach. He gets the most out of guys. Guys want to play for him. But the lack of playoff success is obviously something that looms and lingers. And if he finishes out this extension without winning a playoff game, then we'll have gone 11 years without a playoff win, which is kind of crazy. But I don't think that'll happen. It's just something that I think is the biggest why there's been some mixed reactions. Obviously, is people are kind of fed up with not winning when it matters and losing these games to bad teams in the regular season. But I'm confident that if Tomlin's rejuvenated and excited about the new path, I guess, with this team with the turnover, that things will be better.
Yeah, and you think, Omar Khan, ever since he's taken over, I don't want to blame everything on Kevin Colbert. That's not what I'm saying here. But if you look at the last, I don't know, 5 draft classes of his tenure, maybe four or five draft classes, they got not a ton of talent added to the team. Many of those draft classes are kind of already fizzled out and completely off the roster, or almost completely off the roster. And he did get some guys in there like Highsmith and Watt and a couple other guys, Pickens, a couple other guys, but for the most part, it was pretty rough. So you think, you got Omar Khan in there. It seems like certainly last year's draft already looks, very positive. This year's draft, certainly on paper, at least looks pretty good. And so you like the direction of the team overall. But that being said, there is a scenario in which Mike Tomlin's, extension here is spent without a quarterback, without the quarterback situation figured out, because Russell Wilson, Justin Fields aren't under contract beyond this year. If, there's a number of ways that could play out, but Russell Wilson, say he does really well, it might be difficult to get him back. He's negotiated some pretty large contracts in his career so far. If he doesn't do well, do you want to extend him at 36 years old and then you move on to Justin Fields? I mean, he would have not started presumably for the whole season prior, and so the quarterback situation has the potential to be a mess throughout Mike Tomlin's remaining 4 years now on his contract, and so there is a world where they make it through his contract without winning another playoff game, and I think that is the part that has a lot of people worried. Obviously, people are just going to be unhappy regardless of what happens. If he wins a playoff game, they're going to be like, well, why didn't you win the Super Bowl? That's kind of the standard, and rightfully so. That's been the standard here in Pittsburgh forever. So, where I come in on it is I'm happy he's extended. I think the players still respond to him. You look at some of the coaching jobs he's done over the last few seasons since Ben Roethlisberger left. Yeah, they haven't won a playoff game, but he's kept them very, very competitive. Players want to play for him. Even when there's all kinds of adversity happening, he figured out a way last year to get them in the playoffs, make that difficult decision to roll with Mason Rudolph, which couldn't have been an easy choice at the expense of a former first-round pick in Kenny Pickett. And so I think overall it is a positive thing for the team, but I understand a lot of the questions, certainly. And there's a report that he's among the highest paid now. So we're talking about, the Steelers have not only extended him, but they have made him one of the highest paid coaches. And so that is certainly going to be something that is talked about if the success doesn't start sooner rather than later. And kind of linked to this conversation, our third topic, it's been a number now of kind of notable analysts that have painted very bullish pictures for the 2024 Steelers. I think Brian Baldinger called them the team to beat. Was it in the AFC or the AFC North, or what was his context there?
His was the AFC North. This is
Okay.
the team to beat in the AFC North.
Yeah, and we've seen that from some other guys too. In terms of the AFC North looks like one of the most competitive divisions, and still people are saying that the Steelers might be the team to beat. And if you look at the kind of totality of the roster, I don't know if I fully agree with that, but it's not outlandish either. I mean, they do have a lot of good pieces in place. The defense should be very good. Where do you come in on calling them the team to beat in the AFC North?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really buy it, honestly. I guess crazier things have happened, but I mean, the Ravens are really good, the Browns are really good, the Bengals are really good. It's three really, really good teams. As it stands right now, I mean, the Steelers, as high, I mean, I still think they're a 10-win team, but there's still question marks. I mean, obviously the receiver room, we don't know how well Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are going to play. We don't know how they're going to look when the season starts. Offensive line, there's a lot to be excited about, but there's starting two rookies that could backfire. Who knows if that works out? So there's a lot to maybe be a little bit apprehensive about. I still think they're going to be good. I still think they're going to be a playoff team, but do I think they're the team to beat? No. And my other thing is like Mike Tannenbaum is another one who's like, oh, the Steelers teams aren't going to want to play the Steelers. Like 2 weeks ago, he was ripping on their quarterback situation. It's like, make up your mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be good. I think they'll make the playoffs, but I don't think they're the team that all the other AFC North teams are, necessarily really afraid of right now.
Yeah, and Tannenbaum, I mean, his kind of the gist of his point was, okay, that defense is looking like it's going to be really good. The offense at least looks like it has a chance to improve, and if both of those things hold true, then yeah, I mean they're going to be a competitive football team. I don't know to what level. I don't know if they're necessarily in the conversation with the leaders of the conference, and there's certainly a lot of good teams in the conference, but the Chiefs, the Texans, the Bills, some of these teams certainly appear to be in a better spot, at least until proven otherwise here. But, anytime a team has a top 3, 4, 5 defense, you're talking about, most teams probably don't want to play that team because really anything can happen if you keep the score down. I mean, we saw a lot of that with Kenny Pickett. The offense was miserable. The defense kept them in the game. And then, you just have to really make one or two key plays. And you're talking about upsetting some other football team that maybe, you shouldn't have beat otherwise. So, yeah, I think there's something to that. And then there's another former GM and Randy Mueller this morning via The Athletic kind of writing, this could really go either way for the Steelers. It's easy to get carried away with the rose-colored glasses at this time of year. Everybody thinks their team's, going to do big things at this point in the season for the most part. And he was kind of acknowledging, okay, yeah, the defense looks good, but also, they only allowed the seventh fewest points last year. But if you look at the yards that they allowed, it actually paints a different story. I think they were, kind of a bottom 10 group in terms of yards allowed, in terms of third down conversions allowed. So there are certainly, reasons to be concerned. It's not all kind of rainbows and sunshine in Steelers world there. Yeah, I don't know. That's the kind of talk you see this time of year with pretty much every team. I'm sure you can find somebody saying something similar about pretty much every team in the league this time of year. But, again, that had mixed reactions from people. I read the comments, and some people are like, oh, great, this is the kind of positive stuff we need. And then other people are just kind of, as they are with the Tomlin situation, the eternal pessimists. So, those are fun to get the people talking. We'll do one more little bonus topic here before we move into our listener question. I just kind of found this topic fun. Yesterday at Mandatory Minicamp, Patrick Queen, one of the latest additions to the defense, he's kind of been known as a adept trash talker. I know that Jaylen Warren and him have kind of talked about their back and forths that they have between the Steelers-Ravens rivalry. Patrick Queen's talked about wanting to be the villain ever since he signed with the rival after leaving the Baltimore Ravens. And then yesterday, he kind of doubled down. He says, I think I am the best trash talker on the team. But he also listed off some other guys like Dante Jackson. He said he's, I forget exactly what he said. I think he said he's really loud or something to that effect. And so it sounds like Dante Jackson's going to be chirping people. I mean, we saw Joey Porter Jr. Basically talk smack in the offseason to Emmanuel Forbes of the Washington Commanders. And as Joey gets better and kind of receives more accolades in the league, I think he's going to follow right in the footsteps of his father, who was one of the great trash talkers of the early 2000s Steelers. Some people don't like the trash talk stuff. Do you does it bother you at all? Or do you like it? Do you think?
No, I'm all about it as long as you can back it up.
Yeah.
What was it? It was Anthony Smith before the Patriots game way back when, and he was talking shit about the Patriots and saying all this crap, and then the Patriots went out and absolutely demolished the Steelers. Like it was an absolute blowout. So hey, talk all you want, and then be ready to back it up.
Yeah, and certainly in this day and age, it's a little different. Players can't make gestures while looking at their competition, or they're liable to get a taunting penalty or whatever. So it looks a little different. Maybe some of the trash talking isn't as visible on the television. Maybe it's happening when they're lined up across from each other before the snap, when it's a little less obvious, or maybe they're saying stuff while they're not facing them, and it's stuff you can't really hear from while you're watching on TV. And so Yeah, I think back to kind of like Richard Sherman and the Legion of Boom. I mean, he was one of the great trash talkers of that time. He would always talk about getting into, receivers' heads. And how many times have you heard the phrase, you have to have a short memory in football? And I would assume it certainly makes it more difficult to have a short memory when you got somebody chirping in your ear all game long. So, you get inside their heads. Maybe they commit a penalty because you make them mad. Maybe they retaliate or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. And if, Patrick Queen, Dante Jackson, Joey Porter Jr. are out there chirping, I think that the Steelers group is going to have a ton of personality, maybe more personality than we've seen since the days of, Joey Porter, Ike Taylor, some of these guys who were kind of known as adept trash talkers. And, I'm all for it. I know some of the kind of older crowd aren't used to or don't like this type of thing in sports, but, it's a lot of fun to watch, I think. So moving into our viewer question, we have a call in here from a listener asking about a topic here dating back to kind of the draft, and we'll play that question.
Hey, Ross. Hey, Joe. I'm just calling to ask, with the Steelers drafting Fautanu and already having Broderick playing on the right side, I was wondering what your guys' opinion is. Would you guys rather have Fautanu, presuming he starts or, eventually begins starting at some point in the season, would you rather him start at left tackle or right tackle, or would you rather him kick to right tackle and have Broderick move over to left tackle? Thanks. Have a good one.
All right, so going back to the tackle competition between, I guess you do have to include Dan Moore Jr. in the equation because so far he's been running with the starters a fair amount, I think, at left tackle. Some of that's just because the Steelers like to bring along their rookies slowly. I think pretty much everybody expects Fautanu to start at some point in this season. Whether or not that will be week one kind of remains to be seen. We'll see how that competition shakes out in training camp, but where do you come in terms of who should start on what side? I know we've seen some of this competition play out so far, but I don't know if I fully buy into what we're seeing at OTAs mattering a whole ton. It's just kind of where they're trying them out initially. But where do you come in? Who do you think is going to play where? Do you think Fautanu is going to be a week one starter? All of that stuff.
I do think Fautanu is going to be a week one starter. I mean, we've talked about it before. Just the amount of college experience he had at Washington. It's a ton. It's a ton of experience. I think he's the best option to start. I've really gone back and forth about the left tackle, right tackle thing, but I do think putting Broderick Jones at left tackle and Fautanu at right tackle is probably going to work out the best. I mean, I know that Fautanu didn't have a lot of right tackle experience in college, besides, outside of practice, but he's working on it now. Broderick was pretty up and down at right tackle, and I know, maybe he's getting a little more comfortable at it, but I think moving him back to his natural left tackle is probably better, and putting Fautanu on the right side. I mean, when you think of this is a stupid take probably, but I kind of like the idea of having the bigger person at left tackle because you're going up, you're the blind side protector. Broderick's obviously a lot bigger than Fautanu is. So I think and given that, he was really good at left tackle at Georgia. He had some flaws at right tackle last season. He had some good flashes too, but yeah, I've gone back and forth, but I do think I'd be happy with Broderick at left tackle and Fautanu at right tackle.
Yeah. I went on kind of on record saying I think it was going to be the opposite way earlier in the process. Again, from what we've seen at OTAs and minicamp, it does seem like Broderick Jones appears to be playing a little bit on both sides. Fautanu, it appears at least, we're not at practice, so I can't give 100%, but it appears that Fautanu's mostly been working on the right side, and so they at least want to explore that as an option. I don't know if I'm fully sold that will ultimately be what happens because, we've already heard Fautanu say, practice has been tough. Like he's definitely being humbled at the NFL level so far, as all rookies pretty much are in their first several practices. But you're talking about a guy with 29, I think, college starts at left tackle. If things aren't working out well at right tackle, I could definitely still see a possibility of him moving back to the left. I think that would be my ideal, just because, Broderick now has more NFL experience on the right side. By the halfway point of the season, he would have more overall experience, including college, on the right side if they play him on the right. But it does go counter to what Omar Khan said in terms of they want him to be the left tackle. So I don't know. It'll work itself out. I think it's a good problem to have. Dan Moore Jr. kind of only being a left tackle complicates things in terms of how they divide snaps at practice and what we're going to see in terms of that. So I think, we'll wait till training camp with Alex Kozora kind of giving us the skinny on what's going on until we make any further judgments. But I think it could go either way, for sure. That is all for the episode. Make sure you guys give a call to the number at the bottom of the screen. We could sure use some new questions, and there is plenty to ask about after OTAs and minicamp. So call that 412-254-3145. Joe, enjoy the Celtics game, hopefully the championship clinching game tomorrow night. Everybody else, we will catch you next week.